All right, good evening and welcome to Axiom Flux, Season 4, Episode 18. And tonight we're going to be discussing the word freedom, or subject of freedom. Simple word, isn't it? One word means quite a lot. It's quite complicated, much more complicated than I think most of us know until we start to dissect it all. Anyway, tonight I've got Lopi and PJ. Good evening, PJ.
Good evening, guys. Evening, Stav, Lopi.
Good evening, Stav, PJ. Happy Mother's Day to all the mums and the animal mums.
Yeah, I hope the mum's had a good day today, and deservedly so. Right, okay. Well, listen, I'm going to start off again. I'll start off with just a little bit here, which is the basics that we all probably should know what freedom means. But let's just go over it anyway, in case people have forgotten, which isn't too difficult in today's day and age, I think.
Well, just before you start, Stav, for anybody who wants to have a look on some previous topics we've covered, two being, the most recent is the Golden Rule episode. Now go back and have a look at that, have a listen in. And the one that we did before that was the political correctness. Now that's another one. Now this is kind of like a third one tonight, which is trying to tie it all into this word freedom, and really what it is and where it came from. And so we're going to give you a rundown on that best we can. Back over to you, Stav.
Okay, look. Well, I'm going to share my screen if it goes over. There it is, and it's good old Wikipedia. Why not? But I'm just going to read you this first paragraph that we all should know, really. And the sort of what's the day we were born, really, and freedom. Freedom generally is having an ability to act or change without constraint. A thing is free if it can change its state easily and is not constrained in its present state. In philosophy and religion, it is associated with having free will and being without undue or unjust constraints or enslavement, and is an idea closely related to the concept of liberty. A person has the freedom to do things that will not, in theory or in practice, be prevented by others outside of the human realm. Freedom generally does not have this political or physiological dimension. A rusty lock might be oiled so the key has freedom to turn. Undergrowth may be hacked away to give a newly planted sapling freedom to grow, or a mathematician may study an equation having many degrees of freedom. In mechanical engineering, freedom describes the number of independent motions that are allowed to a body or system, which is generally referred to as the degrees of freedom. If you go further down, it's probably obvious what free will means. I'll just quickly read you that one, and then we'll pop down, and I'm going to hand it over to Lopi because she's got a lot to say about it tonight, a lot of articles, and I don't want to go over the obvious so much. Free will in a philosophical discourse, freedom is discussed in the context of free will, self-determination, balanced by moral responsibility. Advocates of free will regard freedom of thought as innate to the human mind, while opponents regard the mind as thinking only the thoughts that a purely deterministic brain happens to engage in at the time. Yes, sounds complicated. It's fairly simple, but yeah, you can grab Wikipedia yourself. So we'll leave a link if it's too complicated to get this, but I think you can Google it. But we'll leave links anyway. It goes on to say social freedom and liberty, freedom as a physical concept, freedom in mathematical theory, blah blah blah, with references. So I'm gonna hand it back over to Lopi when I get rid of this screen share, and see what Lopi's got for us, because she's going to be doing most of the talking on this tonight, and I'll pop in occasionally with my thoughts. So over to you, Lopi.
All right. Thank you. First and foremost, that was the basic definition of freedom. And in order for people to realize what true freedom really is, you must remember what you define freedom, how you define freedom, and what created the definition of that freedom. Um, in order for one person to be truly free in all essence of the term and definition is to look at it metaphorically in the essence of a baby. It has no responsibilities. It has no need for worrying about anything whatsoever. All it does is exist. In essence, that is the true definition of freedom. Not having a care in the world, not having to worry about your bills, your mortgage, or anything, because those are what controls your freedom mentally, physically, emotionally. Freedom is something that you cannot touch. It's something you feel. How do you define that? Well, how do you accomplish that? Everybody's true definition of freedom is different in every person. What a spider considers a freedom act is a fly's definition of treacherous and heinous. So freedom must come with boundaries and rules. So, Stav, if you will put that link up, if you don't mind, it gives us the definition of natural and legal rights, the two rights, types of rights, also known as civil or legal rights and inalienable rights. Natural and legal rights are two types of rights. Natural rights are those that are not dependent on the laws or customs of any particular culture or government, and so are universal and inalienable, meaning they cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws. Legal rights are those bestowed onto a person by a given legal system. They can be modified, repealed, and restrained by human laws. The concept of natural law is related to the concept of natural rights. Natural law first appeared in ancient Greek philosophers and was referred to by Roman philosopher Cicero. It was subsequently alluded to in the Bible and was then developed in the Middle Ages by Catholic philosophers such as Albert the Great and his pupil Thomas Aquinas. During the Age of Enlightenment, the concept of natural laws was used to challenge the divine right of kings and became an alternative justification for the establishment of social contact, positive law, and government, and thus legal rights in the form of classical republicanism. Conversely, the concept of natural rights is used by others to challenge the legitimacy of all such establishments. The idea of human rights is also closely related to that of natural rights. Some acknowledge no difference between the two, regarding them synonymous with while others choose to keep the terms separate to eliminate association with one feature traditionally associated with natural rights. Natural rights, or inalienable rights, in particular, are considered beyond the authority of any government. Wait, my page just flipped. Or did I? I just lost my place. No difference between are considered beyond the authority of any government or international body to dismiss. In 1948, United Nations controversial Declaration of Human Rights is an important legal instrument ensuring one conception of natural rights into the international soft law. Natural rights were traditionally viewed as exclusively negative rights, whereas human rights also compromise positive rights, even on a natural rights or conception of human rights. The two terms may not be synonymous. So in essence, you have natural and legal rights, or one can be defined as something as that was written down, and one can be defined as something that's not written down. More like morals and how to be a good person. You basically, the golden rule. That's what they were stating earlier when it was being referred to in the Bible. That was what Albert the Great referred to. Inalienable rights. These were rights that can't be transferred to someone else. These are things that are, no matter what happens, you cannot give somebody authority over your inalienable rights. I'm going to talk about a little bit of what happens next when your rights are taken away without you having a say, because that's important. When somebody infringes on what you consider a natural law or your personal freedom, or as you may hear me mention, your rights, because your rights are your personal freedoms, dictated by law in modern terms. But when your rights or your freedom is infringed upon, in history, it always ends up in war. And one of the most important things is, Stav, if you will put this in, if you don't mind. I'm not going to go through and read everything, but basically this is per the U.S. The Legal Information Institute. This is per the Constitution, the First Amendment, which basically is the definition of your Bill of Rights. The First Amendment dictates that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right to people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Basically, what that states, for Americans, you can go and complain all you want. You can stand and protest all you want. You can write as much rubbish as you want, whether it be true or not. That is basically what it's stating. You can go and preach any sermon about, whether it be about the Church of Grass to the Church of God. Your First Amendment right, your freedom there, you are free to do that. You can if you are into a group, if you are a group of people that worship snail licking, that's your right. Lick every snail you want. That's your right. It's written here in the Constitution, in the First Amendment. That's what freedom is. Freedom to do just about anything you want. And important, here's, I'm going to show this. I had to explain what the freedom, the First Amendment of the Constitution was. And when that was written, it was written, the Constitution was written prior to the area of information that I'm going to tell you about now. So if you will put that link up, the last link, it's going to show you Native American tribes. And there's a reason I'm going to tell you about this. Because throughout history, we know about great wars. We know about infringement of our civil liberties, our rights, and stuff. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happens. Because we all know that in order for people to know good, you must know the bad. And in order to know freedom, you must know oppression. You must know the pain of not having that freedom. And it's very important for you to understand the difference of what freedom and the importance of freedom and what causes people to give up their freedom. This is a thing about Chief Joseph, and it's a very important speech, part of his speech that he stated. And I'll give PJ the links to put in the description of everything that I've shown so far. But Chief Joseph, of course, we all know was well, some of us may know, was the chief of the Nez Perce Indian tribe in the United States. And if looking at that map, it was in the Northwest Territory of the Nez Perce, and they, prior to them being invaded, because they were basically one of the last tribes, Indian tribes, to be overcome by the Western white man. You know, we call them white man. That's what I'm going to call them, because that's what they called them. But here's a speech that he said on October 5th, 1877. Mind you, the date is 1877. A lot of things already has happened during this time that he said this. All we've got a genocide of Indian tribes murdered, killed by 1877. And this is going to tell you how he came to surrender his freedom and his people's freedom. It says, "Tell General Howard I know his heart. What you told me before, I have it in my heart. I'm tired of fighting. Our chiefs are killed. Looking Glass is dead. Tuhuluhu Sote is dead. The old men are all dead. It is the young men who say yes or no. He who led on the young men is dead. It is cold. We have no blankets. The little children are freezing to death. My people, some of them, have run away to the hills and have no blankets, no food. No one knows where they are, perhaps freezing to death. I want to have time to look for my children and see how many of them I can find. Maybe I shall find them among the dead. Hear me, my chiefs. I am tired. My heart is sick and sad, and from where the sun now stands, I will fight no more. A great man, a very strong man, basically on bended knee, begging, don't massacre me. Don't massacre what's left of my family. Don't massacre what's left of my people. Please give us. We will do whatever you want. They were given passage to Canada in the end, as we all know. That is dictated in history books. They were given passage, what's left of them. Some of them decided to go to Canada. Some of them ended up going to the reservation. because we know that freedom is a fleeting thing. Here is a little thing about Chief Cornstalk. He's a bit of my ancestral on my father's side. He's like, I believe he was my 7th or 8th great grandfather, and a bit of history of my father's side of the family. They came from French Huguenots during the Catholic Revolution, so to speak, the Inquisition, when they were murdering Protestants. So my father's side of the family originated from France and ended up in America, where they met. The parents met their demise in an Indian raid. One of the sons ended up marrying the daughter of Chief Cornstalk. Now, the reason I bring him up is because a lot of people think, oh, Chief Cornstalk or Indians were constantly fighting and all this. And he's a person in his tribe. He was a Shawnee, I believe, and his people were very compliant to the white man, in essence, for having civil freedoms permitted. And eventually, because there were other Indian tribes in the area that were raiding the villages and raided Fort Randolph in present-day West Virginia, one day Chief Cornstalk was going on a peaceful mission, and they killed him. So, a little slight paraphrasing and bit of information. You can have we'll have the link and everything. You can read it on your leisure. Gives you a little bit of that. But basically what I'm leading into is another person, Sitting Bull. We all know who Sitting Bull is. I'm not going to go and give you a biography of Sitting Bull, but Sitting Bull was and is known as one of the great Indians of American history. And there's the link to that one if you want to show that. I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to read you the end of his speech. I wish to be remembered that I was the last man of my tribe to surrender my rifle, Sitting Bull told the officers of Fort Buford when he turned himself in 1883. This great leader was an outcast, had starved nearly to death, and was a prisoner of U.S. policies. But he understood that his only path was to continued resistance. With bullets, warriors, and even provisions taken from him, Sitting Bull still had his anger, still had his sense of justice, and the words that rendered his enemies into fools. He still held on to his freedom. And the white man said, no, we're taking it away. Now, if you notice that a lot of those things were done in the 1800s, that the Chief Cornstalk was not 1800s, he was in the 1700s, early 1700s, prior to the actual writing of the Constitution. But we have to remember, in those days, it was very difficult to get word of mouth, things by word of mouth, because we didn't have the internet back then. So a lot of things took a lot of time to get through. And the reason I'm bringing this up is there's a I didn't I'm putting this in is the definition of a peace treaty. A peace treaty is an agreement between two or more hostile parties, usually countries or governments, which formally end the state of war between the parties. It is a difference from armistice, which is an agreement to stop hostilities, or a surrender in which an army agrees to give up arms, or a ceasefire or truce, in which the parties may agree to temporarily or permanently stop fighting. Basically, a peace treaty in all essence is saying, okay, we're going to stop. We don't like you, but, we're tired of infringing on everybody on each other's freedoms. There's a reason for a peace treaty is to acknowledge one's freedom and to stop hostile fighting. There's no other reason for a peace treaty, because there wouldn't be any other need for it if you did not have an infringement of your freedom. Which we now go to the Bill of Rights. Now, we all know, here's the next link. We all know that the American Constitution and the British Constitution are two different things, which also is the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights are two different things for England and in America. The Bill of Rights of 1689, which can be construed as the original Bill of Rights, because the United States of America was yet to be formed until 1776. Not formed, but the Constitution and independence and all that. It was not a full-fledged country defined by the Constitution. So we have the Bill of Rights of the English, or the English Bill of Rights, is an act of Parliament of England that deals with constitutional matters, that sets out certain basic civil rights. It's received the royal assent on 16th of December 1689 and is a restatement in statutory form of the Declaration of Rights presented by the Convention Parliament to William III and Mary II in February 1689, inviting them to become joint sovereigns of England. The Bill of Rights lays down limits on the powers of the monarch and sets out the rights of Parliament, including the requirement for regular parliaments, free elections, and freedom of speech in Parliament. It sets out certain rights of individuals, including the prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment, and the re-establishment of the right of Protestants to have their arms for their defense within the rule of law. Furthermore, the Bill of Rights described and condemned several misdeeds of James II of England. These ideas reflected those of the political thinker John Locke, and they quickly became popular in England. It also sets out, or in the view of its drafters, restates certain constitutional requirements of the Crown to seek the consent of the people as representative in Parliament. In the United Kingdom, the Bill of Rights is further accompanied by the Magna Carta, the Petition of Right, and the Habeas Corpus Act of 1679, and the Parliament Acts 1911 and 1949 as some of the basic documents of the uncodified British Constitution. A separate but similar document, the Claim of Right in 1689, applies in Scotland. The Bill of Rights 1689 was one of the inspirations for the United States Bill of Rights. Along with the Act of Settlement 1701, the Bill of Rights is still in effect in all Commonwealth realms. following the Perth Agreement in 2011. Legislation amending both of them came into effect across the Commonwealth realms on the 26th of March 2015. So now we know the English Bill of Rights. Now there's a let me get this up. I've got a video. It's a short one, only 3 minutes, and I think it's rather, not, if anything, entertaining. Here you go, if you wouldn't mind presenting that. It's mostly a reading video, so it gives you basically a synopsis of the Bill of Rights in England.
If you want me to do that, Lopi, I can do that.
If you don't mind.
I'm not sure, PJ.
Say again, Stav.
I said, am I not sharing that video? I put it up, but
It's alright.
You gonna play it?
I'll share it. Yeah, I'll do it now. If you just want to mute your mics, and then I'll play it through.
All right.
Can we all see this? Yep. Hopefully we can all see that.
Yeah, no problems, PJ.
You can't see it now?
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I'll play it now then.
I wish I lived in the golden age, giving it up on the Broadway stage. Hang with the rats and smoke cigars, have a break with Frank and count the stars. Dressed to the nines with hair to match, shiny jewels, casino cash. Tapping feet wanna take the lead, a jet bag and time is all I need. Oh, sing it out loud, gonna get back money. Sing it out loud, get away with me. Sing it out loud on a trip back, honey. Sing it out loud and let yourself free. I'm on my way, gonna make it big. Gonna make this sauce for chicks to dig. It's really hot and a little bit sour. We're getting your strength to maximum power. Flying away from reality. Whatever ever happened to gravity? I see it clear, I shouldn't start. I'm a really good singer like a da-da-da. Sing it out loud, gonna get back money. Sing it out loud, get away with me. Sing it out loud on a trip back money. Sing it out loud and let yourself be. Yeah, sing it out loud, gonna get back money. Sing it out loud, get away with me. Sing it out loud on a trip back money. Sing it out loud and let yourself free. Green on a rainy day, Sally Bones in a cabaret, shaking sticks over the show, Russian joy from tip to toe, rambling down the boulevard with a fire burning and a wooden heart. My mind is set, I won't be lying, but I never really thought it would feel this fine. Yeah, sing it out loud, don't get back, honey. Sing it out loud, get away with me. Sing it out loud on a trip back, honey. Sing it out loud and let yourself free. Sing it out loud, don't get back, honey. Sing it out loud, get away with me. Sing it out loud on a trip back, honey. Sing it out loud and let yourself free.
Thank you, PJ. Basically, that is the origin of the Bill of Rights of England, and we what we now basically uphold within the Constitution, our constitutional or legal rights, defining what our freedoms are. I'm going to talk to you next about the American Bill of Rights. If you noticed, the dates, I keep reminding you, look at the dates. The dates are quite important because so many things were happening all at once. And we could call this the quintessential freedom movement, because from 1600s to the 1700s was a definitive point in history, whether it be in America or in England or Europe or in the Commonwealth. The freedoms were being infringed upon. All of our civil and natural freedoms were being infringed upon all at one time. And that is why we needed to have what we call a legal rights or legal freedoms, because it had to be defined. Too many things were happening, too many wars were being created, too many infringements. So we've got the American Bill of Rights now, and it started in 1791. It was the first 10 amendments of the Constitution make up the Bill of Rights, written by James Madison. Those who don't know about James Madison, he ended up being a president of the United States. I believe he was also the president after Thomas Jefferson. In response to the calls from several states for greater constitutional protection for individual liberties, the Bill of Rights lists specific prohibitions on governmental power. The Virginia Declaration of Rights, written by George Mason, strongly influenced Madison. I'm not going to read the whole article, but I'm going to read you the what the Bill of Rights are. The First Amendment. There are 10 Bill of Rights. And the First Amendment is, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The third, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Basically, that means nobody can come into your house under the idea of I'm a soldier or I'm a policeman or whatever. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, the persons or things to be seized. The Fifth Amendment, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war, public war, or public danger, nor shall any person be subject to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy, or life or limb, or shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against himself, or be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. This eliminates double jeopardy, basically stating you can't be tried for a crime you already been committed for and had been not reprised but freed from. It also eliminates your wife from being bearing witness against your husband, because you have to remember that in this time we did not have the suffragette movement yet, that women were still considered property of the husband, even though it may be of love and everything, and they may not be treated that way in the home, but in the court of law and in the government's eyes, and on paper, per the Constitution, the female is still considered a form of property. Ergo, she cannot go against her husband in a court of law. That's illegal to be forced to do so, unless it's something like modern, like abuse. That's totally different situation. The Sixth Amendment: in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with a witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witness in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. There's your Miranda rights. All right. The Seventh Amendment states, in suits of all common law, there's the reference to English Bill of Rights and the English Constitutions, also known the Magna Carta, common law, sort of thing. In all suits of common law where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be perceived, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Well, not to make light of the subject, but $20 doesn't seem much in today's eyes. But in when this was written, $20 was a lot of money. The Eighth Amendment: excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. This goes back to what William Mary and a lot of previous kings would do. If you didn't do what I wanted, well, okay, I'll just up your taxes. Oh, you know, window tax and all those ridiculous things. That is basically your Eighth Amendment. You're not going to be imposed upon because of something you don't like. Ninth Amendment: the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. That's self-explanatory. And the 10th Amendment: the powers are not delegated to the United States by Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Those are the Bill of Rights. And the reason why we have them is to explain what we can and cannot do, what we can and cannot get away with, and which is your basic freedom. This is defining the barriers of freedom, not just for the powers that be, but for us as well. The little guy scraping 2 pennies together to go and get some milk on before the snow comes. You know, we have to have these. In order for us to have these rights, I mean, in order for us to have a sense of freedom, a sense of liberty, we must have a definition of what we can and cannot do without repercussion. And the Bill of Rights are basically, well, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, all of that basically is saying, if you screw up on these things, yes, you can. We are going to get in trouble. Basically, these are, like I said, these are the barriers of our freedoms, of the modern freedom. The last link, well, not the last link, but one of the things, the modern problems we have today, is like, in today's world, is infringement of our freedoms. And when we say infringement of our freedoms, we mean everything. We talk about millennials being stupid. We talk about snowflakes. We talk about in just recently in today's time, we're talking about the NRA, the gun laws, and all this. We're talking about how newspapers don't give you an unbiased opinion. We talk about all the rubbish being told and lies. Well, that follows on to our next page here. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it has some very important important things to state. If you go down halfway through, it says relationship to self-publishing. When the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the American Constitution was written in the 1700s. The English was in the late 1600s, and the reason why freedom of press was so important then was because the church, not only did the powers that be, the parliament, the monarchy, have a say in just about everything that one did, the church also had a major contribution of that infringement of power and right. So, you know, the freedom of press was a valid, important way to fight back, to enhance people's open-mindedness, to create freedom of thought, freedom of speech. It works all in hand. So the freedom of press basically is the freedom of speech, even though it is written in written form. And it states here, the freedom of press is construed as an absence of interference by outside entities such as government or religious organization, rather than the right to authors to have their works published by other people. This idea was famously summarized by the 20th century American journalist A.J. Liebling, who wrote, freedom of the press is guaranteed only to those who own one. Freedom of the press gives the printer or publisher exclusive control over what the publisher chooses to publish, including the right to refuse to print anything for any reason. If the author cannot reach a voluntary agreement with a publisher to produce the author's work, then the author must turn to self-publishing. That idea is the same concept, but slightly twisted. If we look at a little bit not necessarily recently, it was a few years ago, if there was a baker who was commissioned to make a pro-gay, lesbian, transsexual, ABCDEFG, elemental PQ cake, please don't write in and say that, oh, I'm being racist or whatever. I have no idea what everybody likes to label themselves. Go ahead and label yourself. You're free to do that because we've got the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. You can be a cactus if you want. You have that freedom. But this guy that wanted to, there was this baker that said, no, I'm not going to make a cake that promotes that. That's against my religious beliefs and my right to make that decision. And he got a lot of flack for it. And it's his right. It's his freedom. And we have to remember that as humans, as entities, that our feelings have no bearing over anything, any sort of law. Just because you're offended by something doesn't make it by law or civil freedom, legal freedom law definition, doesn't make it an obligation for somebody to make you feel better about it. You're not obligated to make anyone feel better because they're offended. That's not what the Bill of Rights are about. The Bill of Rights are about, this is what you can and cannot do. This is what you can get away with. And this is what you must uphold. Now, in a perfect world where people are honorable and are all good, we would not need any of these Bill of Rights, constitutions, or anything. And which brings us to this. And I bring this information to you all trying to be as unbiased as I can be, because in this world we have too many people and too many things telling you to make a decision one way or another. And as not my intentions whatsoever. My intentions are for you to, and I'm sure the rest of us can say the same thing, our intentions are for you to take the information we give and come with your interpretation. Censorship. Censorship in the United Kingdom. I'm going to give you information about this and in America, because they are all they are, even though the American laws and rules are American, they do come from a bit of England, because that's where we all come from. Censorship in the United Kingdom has had a long history with variously stringent and tax laws in place of different times. British citizens have had a negative right to freedom of expression under common law. In 1998, the United Kingdom incorporated the European Convention and guaranteed a freedom of expression. It contains Article 10 into this domestic law under the Human Rights Act. However, there is a broad sweep of exceptions, including threatening or abusive words or behavior intending or likely to cause harassment, alarm, or distress, or cause a breach of peace, such has been used to prohibit racist speech targeted at individuals, sending another any article in which indecent or grossly offensive with an intent cause distress or anxiety, which has been used to prohibit speech or racist on anti-religious nature. incitement or incitement to racial hatred, incitement to religious hatred, incitement to terrorism, including the encouragement of terrorism and dissemination of terrorist publications glorifying terrorism, collection or possession or document record containing information likely to be used to a terrorist, in treason, including advocating or abolition of monarchy or compassing or imagining the death of monarch, sedition, obscenity, indecency, including corruption of public morals and outraging public decency, defamation, poor restraint, restrictions on court reporting, including names of victims and evidence, and prejudicing or interfering with court proceedings, prohibition of post-trial interviews with jurors, time, manner, and place restrictions, harassment, privileged communications, trade secrets, classified materials, copyright, patents, military conduct, and or limitations on commercial speech, such as advertising. These are your basic foundation of censorship in the UK. Basically, this is why you see the little blurbs of faces on camera. This is why you see, you could have a naked lady or naked man. Sorry, if you're a bit of a feminist, I'm not. That's why you've got the little black bars over everything. Without censorship, anything and everything is free and okay to do. We must have some form of censorship, and that's as noted throughout history, was dictated and will always be dictated by the church. The church had always decided what was decent, what was good. And that is where we have the bylaws or definitions within common law of what's right, what should be censored. Because even though common law and our constitutions and everything historically go against monarchy and the church and the government, they also have to have bits and pieces of things that were needed. Otherwise, we live in total chaos. It'd be all right for your neighbor to come into your house and rape your daughter and eat your food and beat you up, because that's his freedom. And without these laws, without censorship, without certain rules and guidelines, we are doomed to chaos. I'm going to give you the next one. It's basically the same thing as the British or English censorship laws, rules, guidelines, whatever you want to call them. But it involves the suppression of speech or public communication. It raises the issue of freedom of speech, which is protected by the First Amendment in the United States. As far as freedom of speech goes, the freedom of speech, a lot of people in today's, if you look at the news and you look at a lot of these protests and a lot of these, excuse the expression, snowflakes saying, "Oh, I'm offended," or that's a hate speech. That's a hate, racist. Guess what, my darling? It's protected by the First Amendment, and by the definition of the First Amendment, there is no such thing as a hate speech, and nobody cares that you're offended. Sorry. But It is all protected under the freedom of speech. It may be a little bit different in England, but in America, you can go stand on a soapbox and say, hang the king. You could do that today. People are free to do that under the First Amendment. That's why you've got so many people openly saying, kill Donald Trump. We hate the king. We hate this. We hate that. That's protected under the First Amendment of the United States. That's their right. That is what freedom is. Freedom is free to do anything, true freedom. But we, like I keep saying, we need to have guidelines. If you go down to down halfway down, you'll see a part that says 1800s, and it says beginning in the 1830s and until the American Civil War, the U.S. Postmaster General refused to allow mail to be carrying abolitionist pamphlets to the South. On March 17, 1873, significant censorship legislation, the Comstock Law, was passed by the United States Congress under the Grant administration as an act for suppression of trade in circulation of obscene literature and articles of immoral use. The act criminalized usage of the U.S. Postal Service to send any of the following items: erotica, contraceptive, abortification, stuff to help you have abortions. I don't know how to say that word. Sex toys, personal letters including to any sexual content or information regarding the above items. That comes from the church. That was a moral thing given the power via the Grant administration through the Postal Service that basically upholds morals and values that the church had demonized, which goes along to the censorship. A free country, free country, you can send as much contraceptives and erotica as you would like, but we are constrained by these certain rules. Freedom. We have the civil rights thing back in the 60s. I believe Stav and I, we were talking about this quite some time before about, how it made sense, and yet at the same time it didn't make sense. It restrained freedom of people. But what it also was defining the freedom of them and acknowledging that they themselves were being, okay, I'm going to backtrack a second. I'm going to say Martin Luther King, and I'm going to say the white people of the 1960s during the whatever movement it was called, I forget. I've lost the word now, but I'm going to continue on like I didn't lose the word. That basically, we all know that during the civil rights movement, there it is, they were complaining about not being able to ride in the front of the bus. They were complaining about a water fountain for a white person and a water fountain for the black person. They were complaining about not being able to be served at the bar. They had to go to the table in the back of the bar. Lots of these issues were infringements of their freedom, their rights. It didn't matter that they were getting the same stuff as the white people. It didn't matter that they were being told to go sit in the corner, but they felt that it was important to stand up and be accounted because they felt that their freedom was being infringed upon to sit at the bar. It didn't matter if the white guy wanted the black guy next to him eating the same food or not. You know, we don't care how you feel, but, you know, that's their right, defined by the Bill of Rights, defined by the Constitution. Unfortunately, these rights, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, infringements of our freedoms, are the exact same things that enslave us. They are the exact same things that keep us in our own prisons. Because if we didn't acknowledge them as rules and the fact that they were being taken from us, then we wouldn't need to have all this, unfortunately. And I'm going to give you a final a link here right before I wrap up myself and hand it over to whoever. This link goes and explains exactly what I just told you about censorship and the fact that there's no such thing as hate speech per the First Amendment rights. Like I said, freedom means you can go. I'm not going to read it. It's there for you to read yourself because it's rather extensive. But it can go on forever, and I don't want to go on forever because I think I've talked so much already. But basically stating that there's because of the First Amendment, our main thing that everybody thinks about when they get offended and upset about this or that, it's their right. We complain about the Muslims in the United Kingdom taking over parts of London and the rest of the world. We complain about, you know, this and that. So they have a right to us to be there. They're free to be there. They've been given passage. Okay, we have given them passage. But the problem is that they're not abiding by the laws of the land, unfortunately. And that's not what I'm going to talk about. The point of it is they're free here. They're free to be here. You may not like it, but that's their rights. That's right to for them to assemble, or the right to say their call to prayer in their mosques, the right to be offensive, the right everyone has a right to do everything you hate, because that's what freedom is. All right. And here I've got my final bit of information that is probably a positive thing, because I think I've been rather negative talking about history and infringements of our freedoms and defining our freedoms. This last link is about the Sioux tribe. I know I began our talk tonight with Indians, Native Americans, and I'm ending it with Native Americans. They have won a victory for Standing Rock Sioux tribe. Court finds that approval of the Dakota pipeline violated the law. And I'm not reading the whole thing, but I'm going to read just a little excerpt. The court did not determine whether pipeline operations should be shut off and requested additional briefing on the subject of status conference next week. They did say a federal judge ruled that the federal permits authorizing the pipeline to cross the Missouri River just upstream of the Standing Rock Reservation, which were hastily issued by the Trump administration just days after the inauguration, violated the law in certain critical respects. In a 91-page decision, Judge James Boasberg wrote, "The court agrees that the Corps did not adequately consider the impacts of an oil spill on fishing rights, hunting rights, or environmental justice, or the degree to which the pipeline effects are highly controversial." Goes down to where'd it go? A federal court has stepped in where our political systems have failed to protect the rights of Native communities. See, positiveness. So basically, that's a good thing because they worked hard to uphold their rights, their freedom. You know, from the day one, Native American Indians were infringed upon. And in closing, the white man tonight in my presentation, the white man acknowledged that they infringed. And I think that's really important because in order for a person to be free, nothing can infringe on you. Not your own. The only thing that can stop you from being truly free is you. We do need to have these rules to control others and ourselves from being moral outcasts in the eyes of God, in the eyes of humanity, in the natural world. You don't see freedom is not something you can touch. You can't eat it, you can't lick it, you can't digest it. Freedom is something that nobody can take away. Freedom, it can be defined. It can be constrained. It can be put into a small little box. It can be put on a piece of paper and written out and said, this is what makes you free. And this is what makes you a slave.
Yeah, well done, Lopi. The old quote from George Orwell: "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." Yeah, there's some very interesting information there, Lopi, and I've listened to every moment of it, and it's really good to come across all that sort of stuff you've just shared. I'd like to share a few quotes, if I may. Most of these quotes are from, presidents or VIPs, shall we say. Okay, you can have a. I'll tell you what. I'll read the quote, and as I'm reading him, you can guess who they are. America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. You can have a guess who that one was. Got some more here. The next one is: money won't create success. The freedom to make it will. That's another one. The next one: conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. That's another one. Freedom is the open window through which pours the sunlight of the human spirit and human dignity. That's another one. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. That's another one. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. If the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter. We, the people, recognize that we have responsibilities as well as rights, that our destinies are bound together. That's a freedom which only asks, what's in it for me? A freedom without a commitment to others. A freedom without love or charity or duty or patriotism is unworthy of our founding ideals and those who died in their defense. This is another one. Only a few more left now. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There is no easy walk to freedom anywhere, and many of us will have to pass through the valley of the shadow of death again and again before we reach the mountain top of our desires. Another one, liberty, when it begins to take root, is a plant of rapid growth. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. Our greatest happiness does not depend on the condition of life in which chance has placed us, but is always the result of good conscience, good health, occupation, and freedom in all just pursuits. And my last few ones here. When government, in pursuit of good intentions, tries to rearrange the economy, legislate morality, or help special interests, the cost come in inefficiency, lack of motivation, and loss of freedom. Government should be a referee, not an active player. All the great things are simple and many can be expressed in a single word. Freedom, justice, honour, duty, mercy and hope. And I'm going to finish it off now with this last one, I think. Maybe another two. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free. Now that's an interesting quote, that one, because it talks about, freedom only comes when you're on your own. So I thought, well, what's the point in putting people in prison then, if that's the case? Because according to that quote, it sort of doesn't tie in. But nonetheless, I've got one more here. I've got two more. Sorry. Freedom consists not in doing what we like, but in having the right to do what we ought. So that's a long range from George Washington, Barack Obama, Pope John Paul II, John Kennedy. I've mentioned quite a few quotes that you might have picked up on them. But my last one is this. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility. And most people are frightened of responsibility. And that left me with, the purpose of doing this talk tonight, really, and the image of the bird cage and the bird flying out. I've got a little animated video I'd like to share here. And it sort of rounds that last quote from Sigmund Freud, by the way. It sort of just like sums that up to me. So I'm going to play this, hopefully, if things go to plan. You can see this, I hope.
Yes.
Watch out.
There you go.
That's a very powerful video. It
So
says a lot.
It does, doesn't it? It says so much. I think the only freedom we've got is the freedom to be responsible, and every other freedom comes from that. And I thought that little animated video there with that quote from Sigmund Freud meant a lot. Anyway, last thoughts. Anybody want to comment about what we've done tonight? Then open mic.
All right. Thanks, Lopi. Very, very interesting, and thanks for all the information. Very well done on all the links and everything. Very good. Although it's sort of the ideas of the American Constitution were taken across the Atlantic from here and to a written constitution. Ours don't quite operate the same, but the ideas are there. Uncodified, it doesn't give us the freedom the Americans have, unfortunately, because they come with more obligations and they're not actually worded the same. And that's the problem a lot of people have with the unwritten constitution. And there's certain words in there that's missing and meanings that when they put into the American Constitution. So people should go and read the English Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Rights and read it very, very carefully. Anyway, with that, I'd just like to say, PJ, the last year, responsibility, and the little video at the end was about spot on. So, yeah, what price freedom? And I do agree with one of the guys who one of the quotes you said was about being lonely or on your own. And yes, if you really want genuine freedom, complete freedom, then you've got to try and find a place on this globe somewhere where there's nobody else, and you might get it. But there we are. Back to you, PJ.
Yeah, I thought that video summarised it nicely from everything that Lopi's, shared with us tonight for all our articles. Very good, that Lopi. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me be so long-winded. And it is as I said before, and I always bring up my personal history. As if you looked at some of the videos in the past, I bring up bits and pieces of my history. I was born in Taiwan and adopted, and I've lived all over Europe. I've traveled the world, and I've seen atrocities. I've seen beautiful things. I've seen infringements of civil, human, and inalienable rights. Freedom is a state of mind, regardless of what paper dictates to us. It is a state of mind. It is not something I can hold. It's something I have. I'm free in my world. You're free in your world. And when we go into reality outside of our doors, outside of our homes, outside where we have to deal with society, that is when we are not free anymore. And unfortunately, we are censored. We censor ourselves. We censor um, others. We infringe upon everybody's freedoms. Even animals are not truly free. They have rules. Though they can't speak in English or Latin or French, they have rules. They have guidelines that they follow. A tribe of lions, the alpha makes the decision. Is he free? The alpha lion, the male lion, is he truly free? No, he's not. He's only as free as he allows himself to be free. Is the worm free? The worm is free under the dirt. But the moment it rains and he goes up and tries not be drowned, he is no longer free because he may become food. Everything has different variants of freedom, and everything has um, guidelines of freedom, and it's all within the state of mind of how true you're willing to feel free. Everything in life is a boundary of or an infringement of our freedoms, and we have to pick and choose which ones that we're willing to go without. And that's what the constitutions, English and American, that is what the Bill of Rights, English and American, that's what all of our legislatives, amendments, writs, everything defines. It defines our freedom. That's why we are fighting the EU to get out of Brexit, to do Brexit. We are fighting this and that because it's infringement of our freedoms. Being told what you can and can't do is an infringement of freedom. The Bill of Rights and the Constitution is the definition of such. Otherwise, we'd live in chaos and would be no better than the Neanderthals of the early Homo sapiens. They did not have a constitution. They were truly free to do whatever they wanted. They saw a woman, they bashed her on her head and took her home. Didn't matter if it was somebody else's wife. Didn't matter if they were hungry. They go and take somebody's food. They kill an animal. They eat it. That they were free to do anything without a law. Granted, they had responsibilities, like you guys said, of those freedoms. You take somebody's wife, you might get battered in the end by the other Neanderthal, but you was free to do so. Everybody had some sort of rules and so yeah, our freedom is truly defined. I think I've said enough about it. I keep going in circles and I don't mean to. So thank you for listening.
Well, it's been interesting, Lopi. I've enjoyed it. Yeah, it's good. Showing the the comparisons in modern day from America to England. But I can definitely tell you now, we haven't got that sort of protection or his freedom of speech. We can't go around saying, "Oh, we're going to kill you," and that. As long as we don't act on it, then no, we've definitely got no protection. As soon as we come out and say that, you're looking at some big metal cuffs on and a long interrogation, to say the least. But yeah, we used to say that all the time. My mum used to always say it. She either used to say, "Oh, I could knock your heads together." When speaking about me and my brother, she goes, "Oh, I could knock your heads together," and we always used to say things like that, don't you? "Oh, I could bloody kill you," but you're never going to do it. It's just a figure of speech. But No, it's all too seriously, all too offending these days, and we must censor it. Anyway, Stav, I'll let you wrap up. And take your microphone off, Stav.
Yeah, that would help, wouldn't it?
Don't
Yeah, well,
censor yourself, please.
no, well, we got enough here with incitement to racial hatred, possession or abolition of the monarchy, or compassing, or even imagining the death of the monarch, sedition, obscenity, public morals, outrage, public decency, prior restraint, blah blah blah, breach of the peace, alarm of distress, harassment, Human Rights Acts, 1998. Good old Tony Blair. Yeah, well, he gives them plenty of harms, doesn't he? You know, I guess, and these things are dished out every day in courtrooms and saying, you know, harassment, this, that, the other. Yes, but yeah, thanks, IP. All good stuff, and cheers, PJ, and
Yeah, cheers, guys.